Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our cybersecurity webinar. This is October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so we try to do some extra special things for October in the IT and cyber world. This is like a holiday month for us, so we do get a little busier and things to do, and we try to have at least a webinar, if not every month. We try to have it every couple months. So I'm joined today by Donna Vandyne and Steve Santamoris, and a little bit about ours. Mazteck. I'm the owner of Mazteck. We've been in business for about 18 years now. I am the VP of Technology for the Maui Chamber of Commerce, we've been we do everything IT, from cybersecurity to monitoring to support. You name it, we do it. And my guest today is Donna. Donna, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. Thanks, Mario. My name is Donna Vandyne. I own Vandyne Insurance Agency. We are a property and casualty insurance firm for businesses primarily. So we insure things like cyber, obviously, but other lines of coverage that wrap around a business to protect them from all of the exposures that they face. I opened the firm in 2006, been in insurance for a long time. We won't go there. And some staff is remote, some staff is in office, but we're cyber is definitely becoming a big topic for a lot of people, and so it's something that we really need to educate on. And I look forward to this opportunity. Thank you, Mario.
Thank you.
My name is Steve Santamoris. Some of you have probably spoken to me. If you've gotten a letter with an aspirin or a Band-Aid or an Alka-Seltzer in the mail, that was me. I'll also be fielding the questions today, so I'm going to log my camera off. Okay, Mario?
Thanks, Steve. Thank you. So, guys, we are going to kind of discuss, cybersecurity insurance and that field, and we'll obviously discuss how to protect your company and your business on how to be properly secure and all the things that you need. If you have any questions, please feel free to enter them in the Q&A section. We're not really monitoring the chat, so if you have any questions, feel free to enter them in the Q&A. So let's start. So, Donna, me and you were kind of discussing yesterday about cybersecurity and insurance and changes that have gone through the industry and stuff like that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been seeing usually lately with companies and stuff like that with cybersecurity?
Sure. Well, it's obviously it's reinventing itself constantly because cyber is changing constantly, right? So, I mean, when it all began, cyber threats, or what we call the predators, shall we say, were targeting the big companies like Target, like the hotels, and now it's changed a bit because all of those companies can afford some significant cyber protections, and then the crosshairs turn on the smaller business people. So it can be somewhat upsetting because they're vulnerable because everyone is using technology in some form today, and it's many people think, like on that first page we had there, Mario, people think I don't really have anything to take, but you do. So but the cyber industry itself is constantly reinventing itself to reword contracts, to change rates and pricing based on stats. It's constantly revealing itself. So it's something that even when I write policies, for existing clients, each time they renew, we have to review those forms because the forms have changed based on case law. So we have to watch out for exclusions and for specifics and for industry changes. And, certain carriers will carve out a tech company, for instance. They won't insure you because you have so much exposure, right? You have more than the average Joe. So it's my job to find the carriers that will take that risk and will not exclude the very things that you need. So it's a lot of contract review right now in cyber because it's just never the same twice.
Yeah, and a common thing that we see all the time is, a smaller shop or smaller office, they're like, oh, well, we don't have anything that they would want, or we're too small to be targeted. And, so that kind of brings up like, who needs it? And, we always say, well, every company needs it. And, you may not have, certain things that like is sitting on the cloud or sitting in on a computer that's needed, for hackers, but it's needed for your company. They'll do whatever it takes to kind of just make it inconvenient and get some money out of you. If you're using email, you need it. You need cybersecurity protection. If you have more than if you have one or more computers, you need it. If pretty much whatever you're doing for your business is taken away from you, are you able to operate your company? And if the answer is yes, you're going to need cybersecurity protection, monitoring, insurance. And just because you have, the monitoring and the security doesn't mean you don't need insurance. Is that correct?
That's correct. Sometimes people ask me, well, if I have a firewall and if I have antivirus protection and if I have, all of these securities in place, do I need insurance really? Do I really need it? Of course, because, they're not after, and some people will say, well, I don't really have anything that's valuable, any information that's valuable, but you have money, don't you? You have revenue, right? So they don't necessarily always want what you have in the way of data, but they will take your money and they will hold your system ransom. I've had clients, well, not my clients, but I've read industry stories where someone comes in locally, someone here in York County did, opened up their computers in architectural office and they had a skull and crossbones and it said, no deal, you need to pay up a lot of money before you get your password. And they were very kind. And once they paid that, they gave them back their password and they got back to work, but they lost $250,000 in the process, so they watch your system. They look at you when you have the most money. They track you for a good long time before they hit. And they're opportunistic. They're thieves.
And how long are they usually on a computer before they actually attack?
I was told about a year and a half ago now at a Johns Hopkins cyber seminar that I guess it was more than a year and a half given COVID, but they informed us that a predator will remain in your system. And this can come from clicking on the wrong thing, right? You get an email that says you didn't pay your bill. We're going to charge you late fees. And you say, I paid all my bills. What are you talking about? So you click on it to see, and that's the invitation to let the virus into the computer. They say that the virus can sit there, or the predator can sit there for on an average of 282 days before they strike. Sometimes they'll see a ton of money in your account and say, you open your QuickBooks and you show a lot of money and they hit you then. But oftentimes, if it's a fairly sizable company with revenue streams or cash flow peaks and valleys, a retailer, for instance, will have high values and holiday times, right? A camping store will have high values in March, April, May, right? Because that's when they're selling the most. So they'll strike at those times, or they'll strike when management is not available to control the breach. One of the hotels, I forget which one now, one of them was hit when all of the upper management was in Japan. They were all away at some event. And they struck then because they knew that the management wouldn't be readily available to help. So they just pick a vulnerable point, and that's when they strike.
Yeah, and when they do log in, they know everything about the company. They know, they're looking at calendars, they're looking at emails, they're looking at see, okay, well, this guy booked a trip to Hawaii, this date. So they know everything about the company. And that's why they'll sit there and watch. And when they know the best time, it's not going to be instant as you click that button. All of a sudden it happens. Now, one thing that I do hear a lot is, coming back to a previous conversation, it's like, well, why would they target me? I'm too small, and essentially, they may not target a company directly. They may not target XYZ directly, or like the pipeline or the meat company. Those guys were, yes, they were targeted and they had a target in sight, and they weren't going to stop until they go after these guys. But what we see a lot is, the amateurs, like I don't know if anybody knows the 17-year-old kid that was arrested a few weeks ago because he hacked into certain systems. Somebody like that will get onto the dark web and will purchase like what we could, it's called ransomware as a service, and he essentially just buys the tool. Like it's like a program like QuickBooks. You get it, you run it, and you enter the email addresses in there, and whatever. And that is not necessarily a direct targeted attack, but he's just bought an email list, entering it in there. Maybe kind of will snoop around to certain websites, see who's in charge of the accounts receivable, accounts payable. Most people are posting that stuff on like LinkedIn. So they say, okay, this person's in charge of the money. Let me send her an email. But all they're doing is entering their email address in like a database. They're not trying directly to go into the firewall directly into this. They'll just send what's called a phishing email. And once he gets some bait, he puts in, once he gets a bite, then all of a sudden now he's got his target. And that's where people are not understanding, no matter the size of the company, it's not a matter of if, it's going to be a matter of when. It's just a matter of when your email gets, onto a list, or when somebody just decides to click on your name on LinkedIn or something like that. And all this stuff can be prevented, with the proper security. And, I'll be the first one to admit, we use amazing tools, but not everything is bulletproof. Nothing is 100%. Stuff happens. We're never going to tell you you're 100% protected unless you turn off your internet. But that's why you would need cybersecurity insurance in case, something new happens and you end up having, excuse my language, a shitty day. Now, kind of go through what's if a company is looking for cybersecurity insurance, or if they have it and they're looking to expand on it or something. What are usually like the requirements for a company looking for cybersecurity, and what's the steps usually?
There's an application process that each client will undergo. It's a policy, in my case, unique to one named insured. So I don't write shared policies. I don't write group policies. I want a full limit when that hits. Group policies will be very cheap, but they're too good to be true, right? So there could be 30,000 people on that one policy number. Well, when you get there with a claim, there might not be any money left. So the policies I write are unique to one client, so one business. And so that starts at $1 million limit, because that includes defense, and it includes all of the things that happen when a cyber breach occurs. You have to notify everyone that's affected. It helps to restore as much as it can any reputation building, rebuilding, right? Because once you're put on that list as someone that is not to be trusted for an email, if that's how it occurs, then is it a blacklist, right? You get put on a blacklist, and then your emails, even though they're already your client, don't get through to your client because you're on that list. So that has to be cleaned up, and all of that takes time and money. And by the way, while you're doing all of that, it costs you income. It costs you business income. So the policy, a robust policy, will insure you for loss of business income during a cyber breach. And there's a long list of coverages that come into play. But when you apply for coverage, my rule is always with clients, I say, make that application work for you. Lay it all out there. Because when there's a claim, the first thing that happens, whether it's cyber insurance, professional liability, medical malpractice, whatever sort of line it is, the first thing that happens when there's a claim is the adjuster goes back to that application and says, what did they tell us? And so if you told them you do cybersecurity and you do all of these things, but you didn't say you do websites, and the breach came from a website transaction, you have no coverage. So you make that application work for you. I always say, color outside the lines. Make sure that make it ugly. I don't care how much you scribble all over that thing. Write on it, scan it back in, send it back to me, and we'll get quotes. But it's all revealed at that time of application. Now, I've had clients answer questions incorrectly. It's not incorrect for them, but it's incorrect for the carrier. Recently, I had a client, an architectural firm, who answered the question, do you have proper remote access protocols? He said no. He said no because he doesn't remote in. It's an older firm. They barely use email. So they still have cyber insurance, but only because they're just starting to use email. And so he wants to be super conscientious and take care of the firm, but he doesn't use remote access. So he said no to that. He got declined by 4 carriers because of that question. So I had to jump those hurdles and say, here's why, and finally found one who would insure him in spite of the answer no. And then we talked about, let's just put it in place because it's just easier if we do, right? So it's a matter of, the agent should be helping to manage the client and giving them advice and leading them along to show them why it matters and, how to overcome certain hurdles as it occurs. And there will be a lot of scrutiny because, like I said, it's the carriers today after the pandemic and through all of the cyber traffic that we've seen are very stringent and paranoid and a little mean. So, it's good to have somebody that mediates that a little bit for you and keeps you from having to deal with that directly.
Cool. And are they like, is there certain things that you see, on different applications that they are requiring, like certain, backups, firewalls, protection,
All of the above.
and
Yes.
And do they do like a yearly audit, or are they how do they know that this stuff is in place? Like, I know we work with a lot of government agencies, and once a year, or maybe once every 6 months, actually, for some of them, they're requiring like us to give them like backup reports and AV reports and stuff like that. Do you see other commercial agencies doing this too?
Carriers they will do, one of the carriers that I work with is called Coalition, and they will do actually an audit. They'll give you a grade after they check out your company. And once you give them all of your email addresses, all of your web addresses, they'll check you out and they'll do a security report and let you know what your grade is. You might get a 60%, you might get a 98%, but those points that they recognize at the time of quote, if they quote, if you get a 60, you won't get a quote. They'll ask for improvements on the next renewal, or they'll ask for updates. It depends on the circumstances and what the issue is. If, for instance, you said, I don't have a firewall, they won't insure you. It's like saying I don't have fire extinguishers, but I'm not going to have a fire, right? You have to have those checkpoints in order to get insured. Now, beyond that, depending on the level of sophistication within your firm, certain checkpoints might be made or noted to say, well, we'll quote, but in 60 days, we want to see a change to this answer, right? So they'll create some subjectivities to set accountabilities for you to make sure that you are improving your security throughout the year.
Okay. And, just for our, our attendees, a firewall is not necessarily the one that comes from like Optimum or Verizon. Like the free one that they give you, that does not count. Insurance companies, anybody, IT companies, we don't consider that a real firewall. That's just mass produced. It's not customizable to your security. It's just something they give out for free. So you're going to get your money's worth when it comes to protecting you. So that doesn't count. So when you tell them, oh yeah, my Verizon, supplied me with a firewall, that's going to be denied right away because they know that doesn't, that can be hacked in 2 seconds. Now, is it just kind of like a yes or no when you have cyber security insurance, or is it just like home insurance and car insurance? There's certain tiers in there that you have to, increase and decrease, accordingly?
Absolutely. I was just having lunch with a friend and we were talking about these levels of coverage and how robust the policy needs to be, or does it need to be that way, right? So I was using an example of a client who maybe is a pet groomer. You know, they don't have a whole lot of exposure. They have emails, they have some, but they don't have, they're not a bank, they're not a hospital, you know, they're not a nursing home. So they have different levels of exposure. And, you know, one of the 5 most common arguments about buying cyber insurance is, you know, I already have it. I already have that. And some business policies, some packages will throw in a little bit of coverage. They'll throw in a data breach coverage for $25,000. Okay, a little bit. That's an invitation to buy more. That's just, I call that an invitational limit. It's like, it's just a tiny bit of money. And the reason that's there, by the way, is because when carriers historically were finding that a coverage was not in a package policy. And a package policy in insurance terms is when we combine coverages to save money for the client, right? So we might put together, say for your office, right? You have stuff, you have furniture, you have computers, you have liability, you have workers' compensation, you have all of these different things. Well, we can package some of that in one group policy, not workers' comp, but, you know, property liability. So what was happening was, sometimes the carrier would be sued for not having any coverage at all in the package. So they would lose the case. No matter what the amount, they would lose the case because they had nothing. So what they started doing was putting little bits of coverage on the policy for things like employee crime, $10,000, employment practices liability, that's harassment, wrongful termination, those sorts of things, $25,000. Cyber security or data breach is usually the term they use, and that's usually 10 to 25,000. But that would contain the loss should they be sued in a courtroom for not having enough coverage because they offered it. The client had the opportunity to buy more, but they didn't. So those little bits, those little limits that are thrown in there are included in the premium schedule. They're free, if you will, but they're not robust. So they don't insure things like ransomware attacks, and they don't insure things like notification costs or business interruption. They don't insure network security fractures and things like that. So there are significant levels of coverage that an entity can investigate depending on their level of exposure and what makes them sleep well at night, right? If someone's worrying and they feel like, oh boy, I just don't like how that computer was acting tonight, I feel like something else was happening in there. That's your sign, you know, that's your little tap on the shoulder to say, maybe I need to look at this a little bit harder, you know, check my system, make sure I have what I need, and then get insured.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with more. Like that the cost of sleep at night, like that, you know, it's priceless, you know, it's especially as business owners and managers, it's like you want to be able to kind of just go home and be able to kind of just know that your company is going to be there in the morning. And we see, you know, and none of our clients, you know, everybody we, you know, knock on wood, but we've been in there, we've gone into companies afterwards, and they're usually hit in the middle of the night because they want you to come in the next day, and, you know, they've already had all the time they needed to encrypt and spread through the network. But, you know, we'll see them in the next, you know, they'll come in the next morning and they try to open up their computer and they can't open up anything. And, you know, you want that peace of mind that you're like, you know what, I'm protected. And if something happens, I'm covered, you know, just like car insurance. You know, you can be the safest driver in the world, but you still need insurance. Even if you own the car, even if it's like, you know, you're not financing or leasing it, you need car insurance. It's the same thing. You know, we see it all the time, and it's getting worse and worse. Now, my next question for you was, now, is there certain things that you see after they've had, you know, the policy in place, they come back and other reasons why they're denying it? You know, if you have a firewall, if you have backups and stuff like that, do you see a lot of denials lately? Because it's, at the end of the day, it's still insurance. You know, they're still denying claims whatever they can. Anything else that we, you know, that you could think of that, you know, and are they doing the claims with you, or are they dealing directly with the insurer?
Well, first part of that is I don't see a lot of declinations, fortunately, because I'm so thorough about the application up front. And my clients know they can always call here. They can call my cell phone. They can ask me a question. It's never stupid. If you don't know the answer, then you need to know the answer, right? Always ask the question. And many carriers these days are trying to automate cyber insurance by saying, we have this quick application. You can only answer 9 questions and we'll give you a quote. I don't like it because they ultimately will ask for another application and then they'll come back with a different premium after they've given us the initial indication of premium. So I don't like doing that. I just don't feel that that's serving the client very well. And then as far as after a claim, clients, like you said, nobody wants to use their insurance. They don't even want to pay for it, but they do because what if, right? So after the claim occurs, it becomes very forensic for the client. I can go on forever and put them to sleep with all of the things that their policy includes and excludes. And, they still don't listen because they feel like it's not going to happen to them. It's happening to somebody every day, every minute. While we're sleeping, they're working. While they're sleeping, somebody else on the other side of the world is working. So it's a constant effort. And to your point before, smaller businesses are being targeted now because the predators have figured out how to automate the breach or how to, so they are using the computers, it's all automated. They're not even trying anymore. They're just phishing all day long to get a click. And so what happens after the claim is the client gets very forensic about what they have. What's the deductible? How much is this going to cost me? How long does this take? Right? Is there a waiting period? And, suddenly all of these questions pop up and all the answers are there, but it just wasn't as important before, And I get that. I understand that. I'm the same way. I'm the same way. I don't have a great grasp on some things because I don't have time. Everybody has their priorities, right? So it's a matter of your attention on the subject. And certainly it's louder after you've had the breach and then it gets your attention. But, it's something that people tend to put aside because they feel like it won't happen.
Yeah. It's, I completely agree. Steve, I know, is there a couple of questions waiting for us right now?
Yeah, there are. So, okay. So first, does cyber insurance cover damages for other businesses if they were hacked as part of the original attack? I guess kind of like collateral damage. If an email was compromised and somehow an email blast went out to other people. So if another business that wasn't part of the policy was essentially part of collateral damage, but from the original attack, like how would that work? Because it is damages, it's just not to the initial business, but it is part of the attack, so to speak.
So if company A gets breached and their emails, they email, one of their customers, company B, clicks on like a email because it was compromised, does company A's insurance cover the damages for company B?
Different levels, right? So when there's a data breach limit inside a package policy, as I mentioned before, that's typically a first party coverage. That's covering the named insured. So but that is not covering third party, who is the other party, right? So when the named insured is breached and it causes a breach to their customers or their contact base, that's third party. That's a third party tort. So in law, the policies need to be designed to not only make the first party whole, the policy owner whole for all of what they go through, but then it also offers liability coverage for the third parties that are affected by the first breach. And that's what I mean when I say more robust. First party policies are only insuring the named insured or the business owner, whereas third party, and usually it's always first party, but then we add third party to insure those people that are affected by that first party breach.
Okay, and then for a company like myself, I'm getting a little greedy. I'm asking a question for myself. God forbid if a company like myself were to get breached, would that cover my clients that we affected, that we're servicing?
That's third party, exactly.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Interesting. All right, Steve, any
Okay,
other quick-
yes, the next one is more of a statement. We're getting emails from other email addresses pretending to be one of our employees asking for payroll accounts to be changed. So I guess, what, is there anything that they can do?
for those to prevent those types of emails?
Yeah, other than obviously not providing the, the payroll information.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that you can do to prevent or to help with this situations. You want to have good security in place for your emails. Now, essentially, that's just a bogus email. Somebody that has maybe seen that person on LinkedIn, seeing like, oh, this person is in charge of accounts payable or payroll, so they target that person and sends them an email. Some things that the first step to prevent something like this is user training. You want to make your employees aware of stuff like this. If you see something like this, how to look for, like, okay, well, it says John Doe there, but that's not really their email. It says like it's at a Yahoo email, and it's not at Mazteck or at XYZ, so usually those will come in from like a Yahoo or a Gmail or an AOL. So it's educating the employee. Step two would be you want to have your emails have like a banner on the bottom that says like, this came from an outside source, please proceed with caution. Something like a yellow banner or something where they know that this email came out from outside my domain, my mazteck.com domain, for example. So that, if one of my employees were to send me an email, that's an internal email. So if that banner shows up, that will be an external email. So you'll have that for company wide. So, it is a little annoying sometimes that every email that comes in from an outside person has that banner, but you tell your payroll person, if you see that banner, it's not from any of our employees. And then one thing too is you just kind of, certain things like that with, again, it comes back to education. You want to always pick up the phone and have the person call, hey, I just got your email, I just want to confirm you want to move your direct deposit, to whatever. I need you to fill out a paper form. Always, try to have stuff, don't keep everything digital. You want paper form, not because, it's, you need to keep it on file, but it just because it promotes the face-to-face, like, you're not gonna, hackers are not gonna give you a piece of paper. They're gonna mostly get you on the computer.
Okay, and another kind of suggestion that's being looked for, what about websites that get attacked and transactions are run by the thousands within minutes or seconds? Is there anything that they can do?
What about websites that get attacked?
That get attacked, I'm assuming, trying to take down the website.
Yeah, so those are usually called DDoS attack. And that's pretty much, it's like little robots throughout the world that are trying to attack like a certain network or certain websites. Those are really harder to prevent. Those are like what we talked about earlier. Those are direct attacks. Those are a direct target. It's for websites, it really depends on who you're using your site with, like GoDaddy or Network Solutions, or Wix. I don't know if Wix really has any high-end security on there. But with direct networks, that comes back to your firewall. Your firewall should be smart enough to, a real firewall should be smart enough to know, we are being under attack. Let's block all these IP addresses, or let's block certain type of activities that are coming in. And all they're doing is what they're doing, like little ping tests. They're hitting your network, but they're doing it in the hundreds of thousands at a time. So your internet is actually receiving all this incoming little packets, but they're receiving in thousands upon millions of attacks. And what that ends up doing is it pretty much slows down your network or completely stops it or just makes your whole system crash. And those are usually targeted directly. They're trying to bring down a company, but with the proper firewall, it can be prevented. Steve?
Sorry, I muted myself. I heard that insurance carriers can request a security audit even before the policy renews. Is this the case, or?
Yes, absolutely. Then they will, like I said, sometimes they'll insure with subjectivities. They'll ask for certain changes to be made during the course of the term or within 30 to 60 days after binding. And they will cancel you if you haven't met them because they feel it's a vulnerability. It's a security risk. And they want you to be, they want all your systems as tight as they can be to avoid any of that. But yeah, they can audit. They have every right to, the wording in the policy allows them the right to audit your systems.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to read another question if you wanted to come. Okay.
No, go ahead.
When there are new policy requirements, is the broker informed or do they just send an email and no one will read? No offense. I added the no offense part.
No, the agent is always involved. They should always copy the agent. If they write to the client directly, and some do, they should carbon copy the agent. And likewise, if a policyholder receives a notice from the carrier that doesn't copy the agent, they should send it to the agent. And Mario, back to a point you had made, I didn't answer, I don't think completely, but when there is a claim, I always want my clients to call me first because I want to listen to what happened to them and interpret that using the language in the policy, because I don't want them saying the wrong words. But you know, some agents will say, call this 800 number, you're on your own. I don't like doing that. I don't feel responsible to clients if that were to happen. And certain carriers insist on that from the agents. They make them do that. None of mine do. And I tell my clients to call here first because, you know, it's not related to cyber, but I've had a client call their carrier, wasn't my carrier, and they said, my basement is flooded. This is not cyber, this is just property, but it's to the point of semantics and definition in an insurance policy. He didn't have flood insurance. So they said, you don't have flood insurance, your claim is denied. Okay, he happened to be a friend of mine. I went to his house. I saw what happened. I saw the mark on the wall, a foot of water in his just renovated basement. And I look out in the backyard and I see the downspout over by the swing set. What happened here? Well, the wind blew the downspout off. That's why all the water landed and the basement flooded. Okay, so the claim was wind. It wasn't flood, right? My rule with people is always don't say flood until I give you permission to say flood. But the same thing applies in cyber. You know, you have to use the language in your policy to interpret your claim to make sure that you're saying it accurately so that you gain protection, right? You say the wrong word, you could be sent off, you know, shuffle off to Buffalo because you're not going to get defended or reimbursed, you know. It's key.
They're gonna with that. That's a perfect example. Like if you don't have flood insurance, they're not going to cover you on flood. But didn't necessarily have flood. You had a water break or a spout down. That's what's causing it, and
Right.
that's what happens.
Spout down. Exactly.
Yeah,
wind. And so wind is insured. But and in cyber, it might be a data breach. It might be a network security issue. It might be an internet came down and, but you have to use that. That's the causation. The way insurance works is the initial cause of loss drives the rest, right? So even if you're flooded, even if you have 5 feet of water in your space, you have it because of the wind, not because of the flood, right? So you have to say that correctly or you just shot yourself. So you want to make sure that the cause of loss that you introduce to the carrier the first time, which should be interpreted by your agent very carefully, especially in cyber. It's not as clear cut as water and wind. It's a lot more complex. So you want to make sure that you're using the right terminology when you report that claim.
Yeah, and with that said too, it's like one of the first things you need to do, God forbid anybody does get breached. One of the first things you need to do is kind of just contact the proper authorities, your IT company, have them come and check. Don't touch anything. Don't try to like restore stuff. We had a little side note. We had maybe I want to say it was about 8 months ago. We had a company call us and like, hey, we saw you guys online. You're local, and we got hit with ransomware a week ago. I went and restored everything. I restored all the computers. I wiped out all the workstations and restored the server from a backup, and I was good. And now 3 days later, we got hit again. I did the same thing. So the guy pretty much tried to like cover up and try to restore and try to do all this stuff, and he ended up making it worse because he's restoring a backup on a server, but what was happening was the breach. There was a file, or the company had the hacker had his paws already on the network. So when he wiped everything out and then restored, he just restored the same thing. So he ended up bringing the hacker back, but the hacker kind of was aware. So what ended up happening is every time the guy tried to restore, the hacker would double the price of the ransomware. So it started off at like, I think it was like 25,000, then it went to 50,000, then it went to 100,000. And then he called us. We came in and we're like, okay, well, this is the cause, this is it, but we can't tell what, because he messed around so much that we couldn't find the main entry point. So we always tell people, like, if that happens, just freeze, like, don't even turn off anything. Like, you can't, you have to kind of have somebody come and analyze it. And, there's going to be steps like, okay, yeah, you call this, you may call, call your insurance agent. You may have to call, depending on the type of company, you may have to call the FBI. If you're working with the government, I think actually, yeah, that the company, they're a construction company in Clifton, and they do a lot of government work, and they had to contact the FBI because once the government's involved with any of your work or any of their data could have been breached, you have to contact the FBI. And then it just made the whole situation a lot worse. Plus, he waited a week for this whole thing to happen. But he's good. We cleaned it up. We did work with the FBI, so we couldn't, there was a lot of things that we couldn't really do, but we were able to get them after that protected and backed up properly and stuff like that. Okay, back to you, Steve.
Yeah, there's just a few more here. How much do geopolitical events affect cyber crimes? For example, the Russia-Ukraine conflict resulted in increased cyber attacks in the US.
A lot, because especially like in Russia, those guys that they have full companies. It's a safe harbor for hackers. They have full companies that do this for a living. So with Russia being at war and draining money and stuff like that, well, guess what? Russia is now dependent on some of these guys to bring in money. A lot of it is funded by the government. So they're, instead of like printing money, they're like, produce more money, bring us more. So they ramp up, phishing, they ramp up more attacks, they ramp up more things. So so as something like this happens, they're just, what, they're essentially, think of it business wise, as they're approving overtime. They're approving for these guys to work overtime and work harder and work more hours.
So based on that question, actually, I have a question, if that's okay for Donna. If there is some kind of international strike, which thank God hasn't happened yet, but something massive, right, where like grids are taken down and something to that effect. You mentioned group policies. Would something like that be the first kind of policy that's affected? So let's say there's companies en masse that were attacked and hit and compromised, and they're now claiming. So I guess in that, if in that kind of situation, would a group policy be an issue? Because like you were saying, if enough companies are hit, there may not be money to.
Mhm. Yes, they're vulnerable. They're always vulnerable, but in a volatile situation like that, yeah, they're more vulnerable because there will be more claimants, right? So if there's $1 million policy with 20,000 people, clients are named insureds on it, then there's only so much money to go around. And when it's a broad breach like that, the likelihood of that list of clients or insureds that are on that group policy are going to dissipate that limit much more quickly.
Okay,
That's
next
why I don't
one.
write them, because I never want to say to a client, sorry, no coverage for you. I never want to say those things.
You have $4 left. It's all yours.
Yeah. Right. Where would you like us to spend your $4?
Does cyber insurance cover scams? For example, employees buying gift cards who thinks it's from the boss and sending via email.
It does. Again, that's buried in the definitions, but there are certain coverages that that will encompass that. So there's network and information security liability. Certain defenses come into play. Cyber crime, just there can be extortion. There can be all kinds of things that go on inside a policy. Best to have a good understanding of what all of those terms mean when you're a client, and especially when you're an agent, but ask those questions. If you have a policy and you read a term and you say, what does this mean? Google it. Sure, everybody does that, but talk to your agent and make sure that you understand how that applies to your specific industry.
And they would have a deductible, right? Like a $500 deductible. So a lot of times, yeah, a lot of times you're getting like maybe $300-400 worth of gift cards, so it wouldn't meet the deductible, right?
True. It can fall under the deductible. And in cyber, especially these days, I have clients that have, and again, it depends on your risk tolerance and how much you can afford to risk. This is why I print my business cards on a poker deck, because it's a gamble every single day. But your deductible can be 10,000, 25,000, 5,000, 1,000. It doesn't usually go under 1,000. So to your point, yes, it can be under the deductible. Now, if that card, a gift card causes you, say it's $50, but you want to spend 150, and you put your card information in because you're using the gift card, then that's a different claim, because now your personal information is breached. Yeah. So it can again, it has to be handled correctly up front.
Okay, this is from the, there's only two more. This is from the same person that referenced the DDoS attacks, Mario. CAPTCHA has been turned on and they're still getting through to the payment gateway.
Well, you may want to check with your website companies, make sure that they have it, set up correctly and, up to date and stuff like that. Now for anybody that's listening, CAPTCHA is pretty much that, like a little box, like when you're submitting a form that says like, I am a human being. It's to prevent like computers from just going in there and checking it off automatically. Usually, those are, it's not 100%, but they're made to kind of prevent bots, from just going through and entering BS information to your website or contact form and stuff like that. Payment gateway, and also it could be a real person. A person can be, going through and trying to hack it directly and in person. So it may not necessarily just be like a bot. If it's a real person, they will check it off. I hope I answered that person's question.
And last, that someone was asking about how to contact Donna or you, Mario. I'll answer this also. After this is presentation's over, we're going to send an email with the recording, and in that email, I'll make sure to have everyone's contact information.
Yeah. So so essentially, what we're going to do is, we before I go to this, I have your I have our contact information over here. But we do one of the things, you know, that we want to do is to help, people be protected and have another set of eyes check out their network, even if they think they're being protected. You want to make sure all your computers are monitored. You want to make sure you have backups. You want to make sure you have the proper firewall, the antivirus. You don't want just like to do the old school antivirus that you can get for free or from Best Buy for like $20. You want like an AI, an artificial intelligence antivirus that's going to detect, ransomware. It's not checking just against the database. So you want to have a professional come in and take a look at it and just make sure you do like an audit of your network. So as a special offer, Mazteck is offering for anybody that is on the call, that's not an existing client. We do it already for our existing client. A free security audit. We'll come on site, make sure your network's secure, backed up properly. We can do a penetration test to make sure, essentially if you have any loopholes in your network and stuff like that. Normally this is a $500 offer. We're offering it for free for our guests that have joined us today. And even after recording, if anybody that views the recording, we'll honor it. And Donna, if you have anything you'd like to offer.
I'm happy to. I always audit people's policies if they need a review or they need a second set of eyes. I'm happy to do that. I don't charge for it, so it's not like I'm giving you something that I normally charge for. But I don't charge fees to clients, if I can help it, because we are paid. My agency is paid by carriers we introduce to them and choose for them. But as far as a service, I'm happy to review an insurance program and make sure that it's meeting needs. Or sometimes I find insurance programs are over-insuring a client, and sometimes they don't really need all that they have, because, sometimes you'll get a contract from someone that says, you need all of this coverage. And I say, do you really need all this coverage? I don't think you do. So sometimes that's the opposite of what you expect. You think an agent's going to say, oh, you need to buy more because I make more money that way. Well, that's not honest. And so this firm is very authentic. So I'll be happy to review any insurance programs that anybody has. Certainly, to the point of cyber, I'm happy to look at that and talk to them about what it means if they feel they need additional help in that way. I'm happy to do that.
Awesome. And I did take I do have our contact information on there. You can reach Donna at dmv@businessinsurance123.com, and that's her phone number. And you could reach us at, you could reach me at mario@mazteck.com. And if there's no other questions on there, Steve, are we good on the questions?
Yeah, we're good on the questions.
All right. Awesome. Well, Donna, I really want to thank you very much for coming on here. I hope our viewers have learned something. I definitely learned a lot of things. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me in. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Donna. And thank you, everybody, for attending.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Great
good one.
day, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.